Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Back to School with Maz Jobrani. I am excited today. We've got a good friend of mine coming on the show. The guy has a lot of smarts. He's written a new book called God, A Human History by Reza Aslan. He's a best-selling author. Going to be a great conversation. Tune in. Here we go. Let's do it. Maz Jobrani. Hey. Jobrani Maz. Oh, Maz Jobrani.
Hey, Jobrani.
Mazzy, oh, Maz, hey. I got a podcast, oh.
Back to school, yeah.
All right, well, guys, thanks for joining us again for another episode of our show here, Back to School with Maz Jobrani. I'm here with my man, Tehran. What's up, T?
Very excited about today's show.
How you doing there, Caitlin?
Hello, also very excited.
Yeah, I mean, the topic today is a very big topic, God. Vast topic, right? Are you religious?
No, but I went to Catholic school.
Oh, there you go. So they tried to beat it into you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
No, I went right the opposite direction.
And what about you, T? Are you religious?
Well, not specifically religious, respect for religion. With a family where us Muslim, Zoroastrian, Baptist, and Jewish, and I went to Catholic school for a limited amount of time. I've always had a lot of respect and interest and intrigue in religion.
Jesus Christ, that is a lot of religion going on there.
I was circumcised like 14 times, Maz. It was crazy.
14 circumcisions. Well, I was born in Iran, which is a Muslim country, Shiite Muslim, and growing up, I had the Allah, which is this pendant we would wear. But I feel that my parents and my family was more superstitious than religious.
Most Persians are, though, to be
Right?
honest.
So the idea was if you wear this, you'll be safe.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to no pilgrimage. You don't have to fast during Ramadan. You don't have to do any of that stuff.
Don't pray. Just wear this. Have an eye. Knock
That's
on
how Irish
wood.
Catholics are too.
You'll be safe.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Put the
Same
egg
thing.
under your car when you buy it and
That's it.
keep it
Yeah.
moving.
That's it.
Really how they are.
So it's funny, actually, my grandmother, who thought she was religious as well, she would say, listen, when I go to the casino, I just pray to Allah, and then I win. I go,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to gamble. She goes, I thought gambling was a sin. She goes, only if you lose. So, yeah, I grew up not sure about religion, because people would say, you're Muslim? I would say, I'm a Muslim, right? And then as I got older, I became better known in the world. I think people would say, oh, he's a Muslim comedian. And I would embrace that culturally, but then religiously I felt bad because I felt like I was letting the Muslims down because I do drink alcohol. I don't fast during Ramadan. I did actually go, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is you have to visit Mecca. And I did visit Mecca, but it was almost accidental. Yeah, it's true. It's like
Stumbled onto it.
How do you
stumbled upon.
accidentally visit Mecca?
Oh my
Maz?
Bro,
God.
I was in Santa Monica, and I was like, oh my God, Mecca's right here.
It's closer.
Yeah.
It's closer than LAX.
No, I happened to be doing a show in Jeddah, which is about an hour away from Mecca. And
In Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia. And I asked the guy, how far are we from Mecca? He's like, oh, it's about, hour drive. And I go,
And Jeddah's the one that's not as religious. They have a lot more freedom and tolerance in that city.
Yes, Riyadh is the capital of Saudi Arabia. They're a lot more hardcore. Jeddah is a little more relaxed when it comes to, the strictness of it, right? And so I was like, how could I come to this other side of the world and be this close to Mecca and not go to Mecca? So I went, and here's what's interesting. So I went with the promoter. The promoter was this white British dude married to a black Saudi Muslim woman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we get in the car, we start driving. And what's interesting is as you approach Mecca, there's signs that basically say, I don't know the wording of it, but it's basically like Muslims only. Like you can't be a non-believer and go, supposedly, as far as that's what I understand. Please, if I'm wrong, don't write me and tell me I'm an idiot. But that's what I understood. And as we're going, I asked the guy, I go, how can somebody know if I'm Jewish or Buddhist or another Christian in this car? How are they gonna? There's no checkpoint. It just says, please make sure you're a believer. And I was like, well, I'm believer-ish, so let's go for it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm somebody who, like you, I respect religion. I respect people. If it helps you in your life, go for it. But don't try and proselytize or try and come at me with this is right, this is wrong. I don't. That turns me off. So, but at the same time, when I went to Mecca, I gotta admit, I felt this spirituality, this something was there, because you feel all these people are there. They've made this pilgrimage. Some of them have saved up money for their entire lives to come here, and it's such an amazing feeling and emotion to see these people. So I definitely felt something. and again, I'm not saying Islam is better than Christianity, is better than whatever. I mean, I visited the Vatican. I have similar feeling. I recently went to Japan with my family, and we went to a bunch of temples, and I would feel it there. I think there's something to it. But in all honesty, I personally am not someone who ritualistically does any of those things, and our kids don't either. And my hope is, and I feel that there's hope in this, that my kids do end up being good people without having to go through a ritualistic religion. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? So with that said, I feel like, Reza's going to help us shed some light on some of this stuff.
He is the expert.
He is the expert. He's the expert. That's why we're going back to school with Maz Jobrani, our next teacher, Professor Reza Aslan.
Back to school. Yeah.
All right, I am super excited today to have Mr. Reza Aslan in the house. What's up, player?
What's up?
What's
There's
up?
No applause.
There's no applause. There is no.
I clapped on the inside, bro. I clapped on the inside.
You have clap on the inside?
Yeah,
Yes,
I do.
Oh.
you should see his doctor. His doctor called us.
Yeah.
He has
Well,
the
that's what
clap.
happens when you have Kaiser.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't
bro.
get an appointment. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So Reza is a good friend. I love Reza, and I feel like sometimes we live parallel lives in many ways.
Yeah.
You're like the version of me with hair, with a degree, and with multiple titles and smarts.
The funny thing is like the one thing you and I always have in common with each other is that we're always asked to do the same events.
Yes,
And then we always check in with each other.
absolutely.
We're like, wait, are you doing this? Because I'm not gonna do it if you don't do
Well,
it.
the funny part is actually going to that. It's like we would actually, rather than necessarily checking in with each other, I would ask the organization. I'd be like, "Who else do you have?" They go Reza. They go down the list. So and so. I don't know some of the names. Maram Mogadami, Salam Salmamali, Dababa, Reza Aslan. I go, I'm in.
All right, that's fine.
Because I'm assuming you did the research.
No, I just say, is Maz doing it?
It's exactly.
Yeah.
We run into each other. We're
I'm
like,
like, fine, I'll do it.
is
then.
this going to get us in any trouble?
Welcome to the ISIS confrontation.
Yes.
We have Maz and
You
Reza
never know.
Aslan.
You never know.
ISIS
Actually.
conference, yeah, ICE conference. So Reza, for those of you who don't know, Reza is an author, a producer, a TV host, written multiple books, right? No God But God, Zealot, Beyond Fundamentalism, and now, ladies and gentlemen, his newest book, as if he has not taken on enough, he takes on God. It's just God.
Just God.
Just God. There's
The
no
book's just
the
called God. That's
There-
it.
There's no a God. It's a human history.
Yeah, that's right.
God,
Yeah.
a human history. I love it, bro.
Yeah. thanks.
Jesus Christ. And you got
Out on paperback.
out on paperback. And it's
It's
out
cheap
now.
now. It's
Get
cheap
it now. Get it on an Amazon, on wherever books are found.
Where are books found?
I don't know where books are found.
Who knows?
Didn't Borders close or
Physically?
something? Something.
yeah.
One of those closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
or get it on audio. It's me. I'm reading it.
You
I'm the
read
one
it?
reading
I
yeah.
would think you would get God to read this.
Or at least Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, I was gonna.
If you read the book, you would understand that there's not that much of a difference.
Oh.
Deep.
Oh, that,
Oh.
which actually
Deep.
takes me to, I did start
Drops
reading the
the
book,
mic.
and it takes me to the thing of how we imagine God in our own image. Is that what you're talking about here?
Exactly. Yeah.
Anthropomorphizing God.
That's right.
That's like the white
Oh.
Jesus.
You like those big words?
Yes.
The white Jesus, for
Why
me,
is-
the Iranian Jesus.
What's up
That's
with white
right.
Jesus?
For you,
Why?
black Jesus.
Listen, we've been saying that for years.
I know. I'm not trying to.
That's
It's so
overstep.
the point of the book is that we don't have a choice in the matter. It's actually like it's a cognitive process that is innate to the human condition and one that is deeply a part of our evolution as human beings, that we conceive of the divine not just in human terms but as a reflection of ourselves. Like we give our emotions and our attributes, our likes, our dislikes, to God. Like we create basically a divine version of ourselves who holds all of our own views. And this is true across the board, across all religions. It's true especially even for atheists. In fact, the data shows that if you ask an atheist, okay, you don't believe in God, but what do you mean when you say God? They do what the rest of us do. They start describing themselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they will say, So because I'm thinking about, I mean, I know very little about this. So you studied religion, you got a PhD in religion.
Yeah.
Which right away, by the way, let me just say something. When Reza gets his PhD in religion, writes a book about Jesus, right? Zealot. And the Christians go nuts because they're like, who are you to tell me about Lord Jesus?
Yeah.
And you're like, I got a PhD in this shit, dude.
That's what I do.
Isn't that crazy? Now, let me ask you a question. If the reverse happened, if a Christian dude wrote a book about Islam, do they also, have you heard of people
I spent I don't know, like a total of maybe 14, 15 years in college studying Islam. I'd say with the exception of maybe 2 books, every one of those books was written by a Christian, a white guy. Every book I've ever read in my study of Islam was written by a white guy.
Every book I've ever read in my life has actually been written by a
Written by a white guy.
Even,
Yeah.
even The Color Purple, which was weird to me.
Yeah.
Which I was like,
Yeah.
this is America. The white guy won. It's very
And like,
similar.
I mean, those are good books. They're like good scholars. They're people who are legit and who've studied, Islam all their lives, but they're all white guys.
But that's the point. That's the point. The point is, first of all, they're all white guys. And the second point is when one brown dude, who, by the way, Iranians are white. But anyway, that's besides the point.
Oh, don't get us started.
Don't get me started
Yeah,
in that.
You
either.
see,
yeah.
Iran is actually from the word Aryan, and we are the true Aryans, and so therefore, no, I'm just kidding.
Whatever
Sorry.
it is.
But you're not.
The fact
Not
is,
really,
but
no.
you're not.
when a dude named Reza writes about Jesus freaks get freaky. Like they get pissed off. What the hell? So I just find that very,
Yeah.
it's hypocritical. It's crazy to me, right? But here we are, and you're talking about, so for example, like I know, like in Islam, we're not supposed to even have an image of God, right?
Yeah.
The famous movie, if you haven't seen this, I'm sure you've seen this. There's a movie where Anthony Quinn it's all about, the movie is about Allah. It's about Muhammad.
No, yeah, it's called the Messenger.
The Messenger.
Messenger. And Anthony
just his
Quinn. Anthony Quinn plays Muhammad. No,
No. Anthony Quinn plays Muhammad's buddy or something like,
And the
or his uncle or something.
And the whole movie, because in Islam you're not supposed to show the
Same
image.
thing.
So when you
Yeah.
go to mosques, they have just calligraphy. They don't have, like in Christianity, you have Jesus, but
Icono.
Better PR, by the way. Christianity has the better PR.
better PR.
Way
That
better.
picture,
Yeah.
iconic. Jesus
Yeah.
with the 6-pack, bro.
So the movie,
Right.
but the movie is funny because the whole time God is just the camera, and Anthony Quinn
No,
talks.
Muhammad is just the
Muhammad. That's what I meant. Muhammad.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Wow.
That's why you're here. You see. That's why he's here. So
So everyone talks straight to the camera,
everyone talks straight to the camera.
and then occasionally the
genius.
camera nods.
Yes.
or
Yes.
shakes its head. It's disconcerting. Also, it's like 4 hours long.
Yes.
It's
Every religious movie is for, or any,
And so is Lord of the Rings, which is also a religious movie. So
Right.
let's just knock that one
Well,
off.
the fact is, though, they didn't have airplanes to make the flight, so they had to walk.
Sure.
You see, that's a lot more. So now, let me tell you. So the question I have for you here is: so you're saying even a Muslim? So what does a Muslim see when they see their own image in God? What is that?
So it's you're right. Like of all the great religions in the world, Islam is the most iconoclastic. In fact, Islam is one of only a tiny handful of religions whose creation myth specifically doesn't say that God created humans in God's image. Almost every religion has some version of that.
Right.
That like the creation of human beings was in God's image.
Okay.
When in reality it's kind of the opposite. It's
Yeah.
that we conceive of God in our image. Islam specifically does not say that. And yet, when you read the Quran, there are all these anthropomorphizing things in the Quran about, like, God's hands and God's eyes and God's face. Now, obviously, the way that you should read that is as metaphor. Like, it's obviously just, beautiful, poetic, symbolic expression. It's just that people don't read it that way because, it's supposed to be God's word. And so if it says God's hand, well, then it must mean God has hands. And if it says God's face, well, then it must mean God has a face. And if you say to these, venerable scholars of Islam, yeah, but that's actually a sin to say God has a hand or face, they're like, shut up. It's not your business to question the
dare you.
enormous, ridiculous oxymoron of this whole thing. Just
Holy moly!
because again, it's not an individual thing. It's we really are hardwired in this way.
Because you talk about, I'm sorry, but you talk about going hundreds of years back. Like there's images
Hundreds of
in
thousands
caves.
of
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
100,000 years back. You're talking about like 20 years ago.
Like 20 years ago, people believed in God. It was crazy.
But no, because you talk about these caves. I mean, this kind of stuff blows my mind. When they find these paintings in caves from 100,000
Yeah.
years ago, and you're saying back then they were having these images.
Yeah, so the caves are about 40,000 years. The drawings are about 40,000 years. But what the book is about sort of where did God come from? Where did the concept, where did the idea of God come from? It's not a book about does God exist or not. That's not that's not a question that anyone can answer. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But what I'm more interested in is, first of all, what do we mean by God, and where did that idea come from? And the thing that is impossible to refute is that the idea of God or the religious impulse or the belief in an other or something else, the idea of the soul, I think that's really what we were talking about, that there is something in us that is different from our body. That belief predates our existence as a species. That belief can be traced in Neanderthals. It can be traced in Homo erectus. It is a belief that goes back hundreds of thousands of years before there was any such thing as a Homo sapien. And so for scientists and evolutionary biologists, like the only explanation for that is that it must have arose as part of our evolution. If it's a universal idea, if it's one that exists in all people for all time in all parts of the world, and one that actually predates our own existence, then it must have, if you believe in Darwin and evolution, it must have had some kind of evolutionary advantage.
How do we know this many years later that the Neanderthals believed in the spirit? Like how do you deduce that? Like it's not like you had a Neanderthal and you interviewed him and he's like, oh, spirit. You know?
Obviously, you've never been to Alabama. Please
Go
Reza,
on.
continue.
Well, look, there's it's actually it's both incredibly complex and very, very simple. I'll give you the simple part. The simple part is that we have dug up Neanderthal graves that go back more than 100,000 years, some 200,000 years, that display the unmistakable signs of ritual behavior.
Okay.
And the absolutely clear, really, I mean, like unquestionable sign that the people that buried this person believed that there was another life, that they believed that this person was going to continue.
And what's an example of that? What did they find that said?
So they'd be buried, for instance, with the things that they needed in the next life. They'd be buried with food. They'd be buried with tools. They'd be buried with weapons, clothes, a change of clothes.
Wow, like clean underwear.
Yeah, you never know.
You're gonna need some clean underwear.
Yeah. And so, at the most basic level,
Wow.
when you look at that, you say, "Oh, there was a firm belief here that something else exists besides this material realm. That some part of this body is eternal." Now, the word that we use for that thing now is soul.
Right.
So I use that word soul because we all know kind of what we mean by it. We just mean sort of like that vital essence, right?
Yeah.
That like the real me, the
Yeah.
real Maz, the eternal part of Maz. Our ancestors believed in that. There's no question about it. The issue is why did they believe in it? We have other stuff too. We have, we have found like idols. We've found carvings. We found cave paintings. We've even found cave paintings by Neanderthals. So it's not even just our species that did these cave paintings. There's a lot of it. But the more complex question is, if you believe that whatever you call spirituality, like whatever you term it, is a function of the brain, and I do believe that it's a result of like neural mechanisms, right? That's where spirituality lives in an individual. Well, then you have to basically start with, at what point was the brain able to express that spirituality? And so you go back and back and back, and that takes you further than just the material evidence, the stuff that we dug up.
Yeah.
You know, it basically says, well, as soon as our brain was able to have this function, that's when it arose.
And why? Because you said, why did we do that? So I got two questions. One is the why. The other one I was reading about at one point. You said there was a guy who said that I forget how far back it was, but somewhere in history he says he was dreaming about the relatives that had passed away, the father, and those dreams were kind of that spiritual world. So that's when that was his proof that there's more.
So that was this anthropologist named Edward Tyler, who in like early in the 19th century was basically the first person to sort of say, why? Like, how did this arise? Why do people believe in spirits and gods and the soul and all of that stuff? How could that have possibly arisen? And his answer was, it must have been in dreams. So imagine, like, you know, you go to sleep at night and in your dream you see, you know, your dead dad or your dead sister or your dead mom, and you don't have the ability to sort of explain what they're doing there. And so the answer is, oh, it must be that they continue to exist. And I have some sort of access to this other world in which they exist in dreams, or more often than not, we have reams of evidence about this too, as a result of, shall we say, altered states. Yeah.
Does that mean ghosts are real?
Drugs. I'm talking about drugs.
Drugs,
which were such a pivotal part of human evolution and human spirituality. I mean,
So we
have
believe in
evidence of it
God
going
because
on.
of peyote?
That's what a lot of anthropologists would
That's
say.
right. Legalize marijuana. Want to believe in
lot.
God?
I mean,
Want to believe in God?
You've heard people say, like, you know, you believe there's a dude with a beard with the white hair in the sky, and da-da. What do you do? What are you, high? Like, that's, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people are.
Well, so here's the thing. That view has been utterly debunked. Nobody
Right.
believes that anymore.
Yeah.
Other people said,
You haven't
I
been
don't
to
know.
Alabama?
Yeah,
Okay,
You gotta-
my
listen,
Mormon
guys.
relatives
gotta-
certainly do.
You got to go to Trump rally and
Yeah.
see those people.
I meant the dream thing. The dream
Yeah.
thing.
There's
Nobody
a lot
believes
of
anymore,
Democratic rallies too.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
not.
okay, whatever. All right.
And then other people were like, no, it's because like we encountered nature, and we understood that we had nothing to do with the mystery of nature, and so as a result, we created gods to explain it. Nobody believes that anymore either. These are all debunked, you know, views. The most popular and most endearing reasons for why tend to fall into a couple of different categories. Number one is the category of like it creates social cohesion, right? Because remember, Darwin's rules are about as clear as it gets. A thing exists and is passed down from generation to generation for no reason other than it creates an adaptive advantage.
Right.
Right? It's an advantage, and so it sticks around. If it's a disadvantage, it goes away. That's in the simplest way, the rules of Darwinism.
Right.
So if religion, or the idea of religion, the religious impulse, let's just say, you know, faith, soul, those kinds of things, if that thing continues to be passed on and on and on, there has to be some advantage to it.
Right.
There has to be an adaptive advantage to it, so that if you have, let's say, just pretend, one community that has that belief and one community that doesn't, the community that doesn't dies and the community that does continues.
Right.
The problem is that for 200 years, we've been trying to figure out what exactly that advantage is.
Right.
And no one can say what it is, because the truth of the matter, without getting into like the whole history of it, is that there is no advantage. There is literally no advantage to the religious impulse. If anything, it is an extreme disadvantage because of all the time and effort and energy that it requires, which should be focused on actually surviving.
Right.
You know, if you're like, if I don't bring this apple to that tree, the world will end. It's like, dude, you should probably save the apple for the community. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an extreme disadvantage.
Is it possible that the reason in the Darwinian way of religions, continuing to be passed on, is that at some point some dudes realized, okay, we need to make this so that our team gets bigger and bigger. Therefore, we're going to encourage procreation, and therefore we're going to say, keep making babies, keep having babies. Because you see some people that are highly religious, whether it's the Catholic Church or other religions, they go, keep having babies and keep indoctrinating each other in that.
Yeah.
Is it possible that that's what's led to the survival and the...
People listen to that, but understand two things. When you use the word religion,
Yeah.
what you mean is this kind of organized, systematic belief system that might be somewhat institutionalized, probably has some kind of authority structure. That definition of religion is about 10,000 years old. Like, you can't go more than about 10,000 years old before you start having that.
Right.
We're talking about 500,000 years ago.
Wow.
So we're not talking. I remember, if you've noticed, I'm not saying the word religion.
Yeah.
I'm saying the religious impulse,
Right.
or faith, or belief in the supernatural. All the stuff that hundreds of thousands of years later created what we now call religion.
Wow.
So yeah, Mormons might have more babies, but what we're talking about in our ancient evolutionary past, there's no laws, there's no concept of gods, there's no hierarchy, there's no institution. There may be a shaman, but that shaman is not a priest by any means, and you don't need any reason to have babies. You don't need any encouragement to have babies.
Right.
It's like having babies is the reason why you exist. So no, the answer is that's not.
Wow.
That's not an evolutionary reason for it.
That's amazing. So now my other question to you on all this is, I was just in Japan, and they have Shintoism or they have
Yeah.
Buddhism and stuff, where there is not necessarily this image of a god like that, but it's nature or what have you. So those people that have different versions of God. So for example, you're saying, I see God in my own image. So what about if I believe that God is nature? Then how is that? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Shinto is a nature religion. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And it doesn't necessarily have what we call deities, but it does divinize the emperor.
Right.
Right. So there is still this idea that if you want to actually touch or know God, that he exists in a human form. Buddhism, I think a lot of Americans misunderstand Buddhism because to us it's all, it's all like, it's this feel good thing. Like,
Yeah.
man, Buddhists are awesome. The vast majority of
Buddhists
Buddhists
are assholes. No, I couldn't help it. Sorry.
The vast majority of Buddhists do believe in divine beings and do
Okay.
believe in gods. Many Buddhists believe Buddha himself was divine. It's a sort of divide between what's often known as Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. But even those Buddhists who don't believe in God, who don't believe that the Buddha was divine, still believe in devas and these sort of what we would call like saints or angelic figures,
Right.
who are essentially kind of divine manifestations of people, and who very clearly contain human attributes
Right.
and human emotions.
And in your study of all this, did you find out why human beings need to have this? Why do I need to have a God that looks like me? Why do I feel that? Why do I need it?
This is where it gets fun. So I said that 200 years of asking the question of why, the religious impulse exists and what its advantage would be has led to a near universal agreement that there is literally no reason for it, that there's literally no advantage whatsoever for belief in supernatural beings or the religious impulse. That, as I said, if anything, it's actually a disadvantage. So why? Well, a person of faith would say, because it's real. That's why. Because God.
It's
That's
proof it's
why.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It exists. It has no explanation because it's real. What cognitive scientists now say is that it must be a accidental byproduct of some other adaptive advantage. So in other words, very, very early on in human evolution, certain prefrontal cortex, stuff in our brain clicked on, the purpose of which was to help us survive. But as an echo of that thing, as an accidental byproduct of that thing that we needed, was this kind of universal sense of spirituality. That it's not a thing that's real itself. It itself is not an evolutionary thing. It's just, it's something that showed up as an echo because of this other evolutionary thing.
So we develop imagination, and all of us just imagine a God that kind of looks like us.
Kind of.
It's
That's what they would say.
It's a story that goes on forever, and it's the best story we've ever told.
Is there a narcissistic thing going on here where we're like
the
God?
ego, the id.
Is there? Because
Very close.
Yeah.
So what those scientists will say is, so then you ask them, well, what was that thing? What was the thing that we needed that then accidentally made us think that there's this thing called God? And it's this very, very cool. By the way, this is it's a hypothesis.
By the way,
I just
they're
wanna
all
clear-
going to hell.
Yeah.
I just want to clear that up. All those scientists,
I'm
straight to hell.
talking about this like we've tested it. Like it's not this is kind of their way of saying, well, obviously there isn't a God, so now we have to figure out why we all think that there's a God.
Right.
And again, you can't. There's as much proof that there is God as there is not a God. So that's
by
not
the way, anybody
issue.
watching or listening to this, we don't want to get into debate about
that's not what's happening.
That's not what I heard. Reza Aslan and Maz Jobrani said there is no God.
Period. End of story.
I'm off this podcast, by the way.
yeah.
But continue, please.
So there is this thing
Yes.
called theory of mind. Theory of mind.
Okay.
Strong.
And it's a like a prefrontal cortex function, a higher function of the brain, very, very old, very ancient function of the brain, and it turns on. I don't remember. It's like when you're 18 months old or something like that, or that part. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not just. It doesn't turn on when you're born, is what I'm saying. It
Right.
takes a while
Okay.
for it to actually.
And what's it called
turn
again?
on. Theory of mind.
Theory of mind. Okay.
Theory of mind. And by the way, it's very much linked to that whole thing with little babies about like what do they call it, like object impermanence. You know how like if you show a baby like an apple and then put a curtain in front of that apple, the baby stops looking for the apple because as far as the baby is concerned, it's gone. It doesn't exist.
You can be a
anymore. Yeah.
magician to a
Peekaboo.
baby until
Peekaboo.
about 18 months old. Then they figure that shit out.
They're like, David Blaine is amazing. And then, okay, so here's what theory of mind is. It's that thing that happens in your brain that when it turns on, you begin to recognize and understand that beings who look like you feel like you.
Whoa.
So if I see someone coming up to me who has a head and arms and legs and is like walking upright and bipedal, I think this person, this thing looks like I do. So because it looks like me, it must have the same feelings and emotions that I do. So like if I get punched in the face, it hurts, which means that if he gets punched in the face, it also hurts. So I'm not going to punch him in the face,
Right.
basically.
They use theory of mind a lot in studies on racism, actually.
Do they?
That's where I had heard it from.
Okay.
So it's basically like it's like this massive like empathy trigger.
Empathy. I was going to
it's an
say,
empathy trigger. Okay, but here is the crazy thing about theory of mind that we've discovered is that if you are confronted with an inanimate thing, a thing that you know is not alive,
Right.
but that thing has some characteristic that is human-like. Like, let's say it looks like it has a face.
Like a teddy bear.
Yes.
Or like a painting that looks like Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
that moves when you move, like one of those. You ascribe life and
Wow.
agency to that inanimate thing. You treat it like it is real. So this is that thing that happens when you give a kid like a car and it looks at the car and it looks at the headlights and it pretends the headlights are eyes and it pretends the grill is a mouth and they start talking to the car like, are you hungry? Are you hungry, little car? Now, it's not like the kid doesn't know the car doesn't eat food. You know, mentally the kid understands this is just a hunk of plastic.
Right.
But theory of mind forces that kid to start treating that thing like it might be real, that it might have a soul.
Wow.
Because I have a soul.
Yeah.
So the theory about theory of mind is that very early on in our evolution, before us, before Homo sapiens, that this triggered this desire to ascribe agency and life and even a soul to inanimate objects. And that process began this idea of spirituality and spiritual beings, and so it just passed on and on and on. It's a very good theory, but there's one huge problem with it.
Which is?
Theory of mind says that hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestor saw a tree that looked like it kind of had a face, and then her theory of mind convinced her that because the tree kind of looks like her, that the tree is like her, and so she ascribed her own soul to that tree, gave the tree a soul or a spirit, and then eventually that tree became an object of worship, and then eventually a god, etc., etc. Great. It's a great theory. Where did she get the idea that she had a soul to begin with?
Before Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am. That came way
How
later.
did she? How did she say, "Oh, well, I think I have a soul, and therefore the tree has a soul"? Okay, but hold on. Let's back up. Why does she think she has a soul?
Where does the idea of
Where
soul
does
come
that
from?
come from? And we literally have no idea.
James
at all.
Brown.
Wow.
Literally have
Therefore,
no idea.
the godfather of soul. It's just been solved. Call up these people. We figured it out. We
Call
figured-
them.
This is crazy. So you're basically saying we are crazy enough to look at a teddy bear and go, that teddy bear is alive, and cry for
Have
the
you
bear.
ever had a Teddy Ruxpin, bro?
Bro, I'm telling you, I got an 8-year-old girl. So it's like she's got, Caitlin knows them, and they're
She's got a whole family.
she's got a whole family.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's got
Yeah.
a personality.
And you've
that's
seen-
the bitchy one. That's the
That's the one with the hole, and the government, getting welfare. No, it's funny because it's exactly if like when she's had a hole in one of her pet, in her stuffed animals or something, she'll get upset. She's like, "Oh my God, I need to fix the," and it's true.
She knows.
Cloth.
She knows it's cloth.
Yeah.
She knows it's not real.
Yeah.
But her theory of mind can't help but give her own feelings to that teddy bear. If the teddy bear has a hole, she thinks, what if I had a hole?
Wow.
If I had a hole, it would hurt, therefore it hurts the teddy bear.
Holy moly! So we're crazy enough to believe that teddy bears have a soul. I mean, the God thing is like
It
well,
might not be
we-
crazy if it helps us survive and create things and imagine and create a world around us. It's part of the process,
And
right?
collaborate with other people or whatever.
Well, that's part of what I think, because I did. Now, you went and got your PhD in this. I took one class in college.
And it was a good class.
Good class, and it was called Politics and Religion, and it was this German guy who was a total atheist or agnostic, and he was
This
Mr.
is Santa Monica Community College?
Santa Monica Community College. He would talk. He was Mr. Sperlich, Professor Sperlich. He would, he was very kind of dismissive of like people that believed in religion in a way, But we're going to talk about politics and religion today. And the reason people need religion is because it gives them the answer. It tells them what to do. You wake up in the morning. You have to wear these clothes. You have to marry this person, and this is the answer. The people can't live without the answer. I'm like, all right, dude, relax. We get it. You're avant-garde. You don't need a.
So here's the thing. What he's saying is what a lot of people say. Like, right, people, the reason religion exists is because it gives answers to unanswerable questions. The reason that religion exists is that it alleviates anxiety. The reason that religion exists is that it creates cohesion, in a community. The problem is that those are all functionalist answers. What you just said is what religion does. What does religion do? Yeah, religion provides answers. Religion provides comfort. Religion provides community. But that's not why religion exists.
Right.
What religion
was a
does
byproduct.
is not what religion, why it exists. And that's the problem, is that people who don't think about this enough, like your professor.
Like me.
They extrapolate from that. Like, oh, religion gives people, it soothes their minds and it gives them answers to unanswerable questions. That's why it exists. As though our ancient cavemen were like, I think that the moon is made of cheese, and so therefore I'm going to survive, over you. Having answers, as wrong as those answers may be, to unanswerable questions is not an adaptive advantage.
Right.
Soothing anxiety, which, by the way, is the opposite of what religion does. Religion creates anxiety. It doesn't soothe anxiety. If you think that if you don't deliver this sacrifice in time, the entire world will end.
Yeah.
That's not soothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do this or I will kill you. God
do you know
said.
how hard it is to find a virgin in LA, bro? Like, oh my gosh.
Very
But
anxious.
even if it were, let's say it's true, that's still not an adaptive advantage.
Yeah.
That does not, it doesn't make my hunt better than your hunt.
Right.
So again, it's about not confusing the terms here.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that religion does in the modern world, but none of those things are why religion arose, or the
Right.
religious impulse arose hundreds of thousands of years ago.
So interesting. It's all because it's like the question that becomes: is it instinct? Is it what was it? And because I read a little bit about, you were saying things like, because first of all, the one about if you're an atheist, so you don't believe in a God. Well, then what image do you believe? Like, what is that?
Well, you said it really well. When people are like, oh, dude, what's wrong with you? You believe that there's like an old man in the sky with the beard who like judges your actions and punishes you when you do bad and, rewards you when you do good. Well, first of all, you're describing your dad, okay? You're not describing anyone that I would refer to as God.
Right.
Like, that's not even in the ballpark
Yeah.
of what I would say is
Yeah.
God. You're just describing, you're describing yourself. You're describing,
A human being.
a human being.
Yeah.
That's what you are describing.
Yeah.
And then when you say, because as you can imagine, I have a lot of debates with these famous atheists. And then when you say that, like, that's not what God means, dude, they're like, well, you're just, you're changing definitions. What they're saying is like, no, like everybody who says God thinks an old man who lives on a cloud. Like the famous like the Richard Dawkins, like own that he is like, he's like very famous for this thing where he's like, what if I told you that it's all belief in a spaghetti monster, right? The spaghetti monster argument, which like every 17-year-old boy is all excited about, like, yeah, what's up, yeah, religion is stupid because of the spaghetti monster.
Spaghetti monster.
And he's like, and if I told you that there's a spaghetti monster who lives and controls all our actions, would you believe that? And my answer is, well, yeah, if your definition of God was a spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you view what the thing is. It's about, do you believe that there is something beyond the material realm, something knowable, something with a will,
Right.
or not? If that thing is made out of fucking spaghetti, fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you're not owning us.
I would like to know more about the spaghetti monster, which I am now giving my faith to.
And then there's the tortellini god, and then they
tortellini
fight.
god,
It's really
yeah,
bad.
exactly.
So all this being said, the expert on God, do you believe in God?
I do, but I think it's important to say that faith is an emotion. And I think that people forget that most basic thing, right? Because you get into these arguments where they're like, prove it. Okay, prove you love your wife. Prove it.
Ooh.
That's what Valentine's Day is about.
Yeah.
That's why we have that once a
Perfect
year.
timing.
It's like checkmate. It's like, you got me. I don't love my wife. I really don't care. I don't.
That's what balloons and cards are for, Reza.
Or even worse, people will be like, well, this is so stupid because now we know that the faith experience is the result of chemical reactions in the brain. I could literally open your skull and, touch little areas and have you have a spiritual experience. Therefore, your spiritual experience doesn't exist. I could open up your skull and push certain things and have you feel scared. I could open up your skull, push certain things, and have you feel love. Does that mean that those things don't exist?
Get me scared,
in general. But it's the idea that it's just such a stupid argument. Like because we know the neural mechanism whereby a particular emotion is expressed, therefore that emotion is not real. Like no one would say that about any other emotion.
Right.
So why would faith be any different? Literally every experience you have ever had in your entire life is a result of chemical reactions in your brain. So why would the faith experience be different in any way? It makes no sense.
And there's no proof to it one way or the other in terms of like, is there a God? Is there not a God? But what I like about the book is the book is right here for those of you watching. God, right there by Reza Aslan, A Human History by Reza Aslan. What I like about the book is this journey to find out where this instinct came from. Came from. And you mentioned at one point, guys like Freud, who are very interesting. Because what does he say about God?
Well, Freud, who it's so weird that somebody could be so wrong about literally everything that he said, and we still read him all the time. Like basically everything that Freud said was wrong, but he was like the first to say it.
Right.
Right. Which kids out there, if you're listening, if you want to be remembered forever, just say really wrong things, but first.
Be first.
But Freud's whole point was the reason that religion exists is to tamp down our natural instincts. So we're walking around, cavemen, with our little loincloths, and the whole time we're thinking, it would be cool. I would love to kill my dad and then consume his body and then fuck my mom.
Yes.
But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
And my neighbor's wife. Don't forget the
My neighbor's wife, yeah. But I'm not going to do that because there are these gods who are watching me and who will judge my actions.
So could that be the adaptive advantage? Is morality comes from a sense of religion?
Altruism, morality. Again, there are two major problems here.
Yeah.
He's talking about a definition of God or gods that's barely 5,000 years old. The notion of God as a divine lawgiver or a source of morality is very, very new. I mean, it's basically barely 5,000 years old. And by the way, the notion of a divine reward and punishment, a heaven and hell, is barely 3,000 years old.
Wow.
Before 3,000 years ago, there was no such thing as heaven or hell. Literally, those ideas did not exist. And before 5,000 years ago, there was no concept that our morality comes from heaven. On the contrary, the gods of Mesopotamia, the gods of Egypt, the gods of Greece and Rome, these were the most amoral motherfuckers that you could possibly imagine. They were like vain and violent and jealous and stupid and
hedonistic
and sexually harassing women all the time. Like Zeus was just going around
rapey,
as a swan.
Talk
Just
about
freaking-
me too.
constantly, so much raping.
You guys want to thank the Persians for the morality. I just want to throw that out there. Heaven and hell,
Thank
you're
you
very
much.
welcome, people.
That's actually very
You're
true.
very welcome. When Jesus was born, who gave him the myrrh and the gold? You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's us.
Does that come from Zoroastrianism? Is that where it comes from?
The prophet Zarathustra was literally the first human being in recorded history to say that when you die, if you were a good person, you go to a good place. If you were a bad person, you go to a bad place.
You're
like
welcome.
literally no one.
Wow.
No one had said that before.
So he said it, but he didn't patent it, and then these other guys took it, and now nobody knows.
Well, they knew it was his, but they just
now the
took-
only time you mention it, he goes Zarathustra, you go Parsi, they go, oh, Freddie Mercury. That's all. That's all they get.
Before then, it's not like we didn't believe in an afterlife.
Yeah.
It's just the prevailing belief was if you're a slave in this life, you're a slave in the next life. If you're a king in this life, you're a king in that life. Morality has nothing to do with it. It's just your social status.
Right.
You continue to live in whatever position you were in. And Zarathustra was like, no, dude, no. If your good words, good thoughts, and good deeds outweigh, literally there's a balance. He imagined a balance.
Right.
Outweigh your bad words, bad thoughts, and bad deeds, you go to paradise. That's
Wow.
the Persian word paradise, right? And if not, you go to a place of eternal punishment.
Yeah.
And everybody else was like, dude, that's good. That is
Strong.
really
We
love
like that. We
that
like
is
that.
good.
Like
Like we
that.
are
That's good.
definitely stealing that.
That's great.
You're welcome, people.
That is amazing.
But yeah, so this Freud's whole point is based on a complete misunderstanding of what religion is. I mean, this idea that, you know, our ancient Neanderthals were going around going like, I'm going to be good because God is watching me, and if I do something wrong, he'll punish me. That's not a belief system that existed.
Right. So Reza, as we're starting to wrap it up because we're getting close, right, time-wise, let me ask you this. So one of the reason this show was inspired, I wanted to do this show was my son asked me a question that I didn't have the answer for. He's 10 years old. So when I talked to him about
And you
God,
said, let me ask Reza.
I said, let me ask Reza. I actually kept saying, I was like, I wish I had professors around to answer these questions. You know how it is. Kids ask questions.
yeah.
You probably know the answer.
Except I have the answer. so
Yeah,
it's
I
different.
Google.
Yeah.
I Google. But my question is, so when I talk to my kids about this why we imagine God the way we imagine God and all that. So how would you explain something like this to your kids? Like why? What would your explanation be? Or would you be like, kids, you're gonna have to take my class?
Well, kids, I mean, it's amazing the ability that children have to understand these incredibly complex issues, because they, unlike most adults, don't understand there to be like this divide between the material and spiritual, right? An atheist is someone who says that all that exists is the material world.
Right.
Nothing exists beyond the material world. If you can't experience it with your empirical senses, it's not a thing.
Right.
A believer, regardless of what that believer says, is that no, there is something on the other side of the material world. There is
Right.
this other aspect of reality, and you can call it Buddha nature, you can call it whatever you want to call it. The religions have a different name for it, but it's, and by the way, people who are not of any religion but who are still spiritual believe that
Right.
no, there is something else.
Something.
And there's not just something else, but that thing can be experienced. And it can be experienced through meditation or prayer or whatever. Like whatever,
Hallucinating or
yeah,
whatever, right.
drugs,
Drugs, yeah.
whatever your thing is,
Yeah.
climbing a mountain,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's the dividing line. Kids have no concept of that dividing line. They just don't understand why those things should be bifurcated.
Wow.
Like they don't even get it. They're just like, well, it's all one and the same.
Yeah.
The material and the spiritual world are the same. And I think it's all about sort of feeding that idea. I mean, you don't have to believe in God. You can be a perfectly moral and wonderful and happy human being without belief in God.
Yeah.
But I truly believe, and I'm saying this not just as a spiritual person, but I'm saying this as someone who has studied the science of it. I truly believe that the human condition cannot be experienced in its fullest
Yeah.
without the recognition that there is more than this, that
Right.
it's not just this.
Yeah.
That there is this other thing that you can experience. And so I want that for my kids.
Right.
The way that we do it, my wife and I, so this summer we took them on an 80-day journey around the world. We literally
Whoa.
circled the globe
In a hot
80
air
days.
balloon. I have read about this.
Yeah.
I have 2 7-year-olds and a 4-year-old. Yeah, and we circled the globe, and in every place that we went, we immersed ourselves in some other religious tradition or some mythology or something like that. And basically, what we were trying to express to them, and they got it, is that these are just different ways of feeling the same emotion, right? Like the emotion is what's important. We want to foster the emotion in
Yeah.
our kids. But how they name the emotion, we don't care.
That's
We
amazing.
just don't care. So it's about that. It's about saying there is more.
I like that because it's funny. Every parent that was listening to this, right, is like, you took your 3 kids under the age of 8 on a trip around 80. Are you crazy?
16 countries, 22 cities.
Wow.
80 days.
That in itself is
brave.
a religious experience.
Yeah.
Like that's actually a religion on its own.
It sure is.
They're going to be parents in the future. They're like, and then there was a man,
There was this.
and he took children
Aslanism.
on
On
a
a
trip.
pilgrimage.
By the
on
way,
a
you have no
trip.
idea. Like we would meet people and the disgusted faces they would give us. It wasn't like, wow, that's amazing, congratulations, you guys are incredible.
Yeah.
It was like, what? What?
Are you out of your
By the way, it
mind?
doesn't matter what language they spoke
Yeah.
either. They just, everything.
¿Qué? Estúpido. Pendejo, venga de niños aquí, ¿por qué? Well, listen, man, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Really a treat. I could talk to you for days and days. Guys, get the book, God, A Human History by Reza Aslan. He's done it again. And follow Reza on social media. It's all at Reza Aslan,
That's
right?
where I get in trouble.
That's where he gets in trouble, by the way.
At Reza Aslan.
It's the funniest thing because I get people hitting me sometimes and I don't answer. Reza answers, and I'm proud of you. I'm
And you're
proud
not
of
allowed
you.
to say the word shit.
Also
in-
brave.
in
You can't say
connection
shit.
Oh,
Yeah, you
to
can't say
anyone
shit.
in power. Apparently, I don't know.
Amazing.
I don't know.
Yeah,
You could say Nazis are cool.
yeah. You
Right.
can say
But you're
Nazis
not
are
allowed
cool,
to say.
But you can't
But
criticize.
if you
Don't be a
say
piece
the
of
guy
shit.
who said Nazis are cool is a piece of shit, and then people
Well,
they
that
come
person's
after
an
you.
elected official
Well,
of the highest power in the land. I don't know.
anyway, we'll do
I don't
other.
know.
We're gonna do other episodes. Where we're gonna get into that kind of stuff. I hope you come back and join us
Absolutely,
again. You're
man. Thank you,
fantastic.
guys.
Thank you.
Follow Reza at Reza Aslan. You guys know Caitlin. You know Tehran. I'm Maz Jobrani. Thank you.
Back to school. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Back to School with Maz Jobrani. We hope you're enjoying it. We hope you're having fun. And we hope you're learning something. So make sure to let your friends know. Share it on iTunes. Share the clips from YouTube. Just get it out there. However you're listening, let your friends know to tune in to Back to School with Maz Jobrani.